Welcome to Wrasslin Raw!
All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Why did you have to do that?
Joe Giammatteo.
I'm sorry, but I can't answer that.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw is War at a time. But first,
you've got mail.
Very nice. Our man across the pond, Lord Thomas, the Viscount of Grimsby, checked in with us here via email. He wrote to us, I'm crossing my fingers that all the Raw episodes are going to be in Netflix when they cross over. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to listen to on my Monday drive to work. That's certainly an ongoing concern. Joe, you've got your fingers on the pulse of the wrestling industry. Have you had any news on that? Do you know what's going on?
Well, yes. First off, thank you to UK Tommy for sending that question in here, or that comment is more of a comment. But from what I understand, so here in the US, new Raw starting in January will be on Netflix moving forward, but the classic content I think will remain on the Cock, as well as new pay-per-views moving forward. And all the old pay-per-views as well will be on the Cock here in the US. However, as the Fink would say, for the UK, I think everything is moving to Netflix for them in January. So it will be a one-stop shop. And based on some live programming that has been on Netflix recently, I don't think our friends in the UK should be too excited, but we'll see if they get their shit together.
Speaking about the Mikey T boxing match.
That and a couple other events were a clusterfuck, so I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's what they're saying right now. The Cock here in the U.S. goes through the whole year of 2025, where we will still have the classic content there. But I think for our friends overseas, now that the WWE Network is going to be officially gone forever for them, even though the WWE is saying is then, now, and forever, they lied about WWE Network for our friends.
Impossible.
Overseas, yeah.
Bait and switch? What?
I think what got people nervous was their statement said that all live events, including select historical episodes or something, will be on there. But I think the general consensus is that was some safe words, because they probably will leave out some episodes, much as the Cock has different content that maybe isn't appropriate anymore. But the general thought is that historical Raw episodes will be on Netflix.
General thought is a good way to put it, because for some reason the WWE is not putting out official information. This is all information that I'm just reading online. So the source is not WWE. For some reason, they are not giving us information on future programming other than new Raw episodes will be on Netflix starting in January. That's it.
Yeah, real startling lack of detail from anybody involved officially.
Which would be devastating to our international viewer numbers if they purge that. So hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Joseph. As always, we are reliant upon your ability to parse the wrestling business for us. It's much, much appreciated. We've also got some good news in the old inbox. Ryan, why don't you tell our listeners what we found out?
Well, it's taken 5 years, but we have finally got the last state in the U.S., Montana. We now have subscribers in all 50 states. May God have mercy on their souls.
I'm sure many people are familiar with the scene of George W. Bush reading to the children, and some guy whispers in his ear about the towers. Yeah. I just imagine somebody came up behind you, Ryan, up to your ear and said, "We have all 50 states, sir."
Montana has fallen.
Well, we've always known that they are independent thinkers up there in Big Sky Country. We've also always known that they would come crawling to us eventually.
They all do.
Just a matter of time. All right, well, let's close up the old inbox here.
Goodbye.
And just as a heads up for our listeners, you might have noticed that we missed this past week in our release schedule. That's because it was Thanksgiving here in the States. We were doing the usual traveling that happens this time of year. And in a couple weeks here, towards the end of December, we're going to be doing some more traveling too. So there's going to be a blank episode, or I should say a blank week in there. And we're also going to have our Christmas episode in the mix. So details on that will be forthcoming. You'll get more details out of Wrasslin Raw than you do out of the WWF about programming schedules. It's that time of year.
Heads up. And no worries, if you're discouraged by that news, we'll give you a full refund.
In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on June 29th, 1998. This Raw was recorded at the Gund Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, and features Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then. Let's get into it. I was really curious going into this as to how they were going to handle the fallout from the King of the Ring. And I'm just going to put it up here up front. They barely mentioned the Hell in the Cell match at all in this episode. So don't be surprised if we don't mention it either moving forward throughout this episode. They didn't talk about it at all. There was one cameo from Mick Foley in one scene, and that was it.
He was on premise, surprisingly, 24 hours later.
Didn't say anything, though. Just for like a split second.
We did see him consoling Oh My God Kelly at the end of that interview.
Yeah.
But it was really great to just have the King there with JR tonight.
Yes.
No fucking pencil neck geek Michael Cole. Hopefully that continues from now on. Hopefully that's going to be the format.
Yes. Well, the episode led with a recap of the championship match from last night, culminating with Kane winning the championship, which I'm sure made him feel better about the world of shit that he's been living in for 20 years, and I'm looking forward to a long and fruitful run. The entertainment began with a chorus of boos as Vince McMahon came out with Briscoe and Slaughter. Vince was very pleased with himself with the results from last night. The championship belt was there in the ring in a plexiglass case on a red velvet pedestal. And Vince really leaned in to putting over Kane. I especially liked when Vince said that he's going to be welcoming a champion that has never uttered an obscenity in his entire life, which is probably true since Kane just recently got that Goozle vibrator.
Yeah.
And man, what an entrance for Kane when they finally got there. They had this timed beautifully. There was nothing new here in the entrance, but it just hit just right for the situation. The crowd erupted. Once they got to the ring, Paul Bearer ripped into a promo, and it was almost impossible to follow what he was saying because the crowd noise never let up. The Austin chants were heavy, but my favorite part of that was Paul emphasizing that The Undertaker now stood in the shadow of his little brother. Just as Vince was presenting the belt to Kane, the glass broke, and Stone Cold Steve Austin came down to the ring. I loved that shirt he was wearing. I don't remember it, but it just said Stone Cold on the front with like blazing blue serial killer eyes in between the words. That's a pretty badass shirt. I loved it when Austin said he'd knock Vince's head off just for wearing those stupid shoes. Got a pop out of me. I also loved it when Vince passed the buck to Paul Bearer on whether or not Austin would get a rematch tonight. And this actually went on for a while because everybody was reluctant to grant the rematch. But finally, Kane gave a big head nod to accept the rematch, and we've got our main event set for this evening. After that, we got a good clip package putting over the encore for tomorrow night. And that is what wrapped up the first segment. I thought this was a great start to this episode. We got a little taste of Vince. We got a taste of Paul. We got a lot of Austin. We've got a story for this episode. So I hope we're fully out of that slump that we were in for a couple weeks. This sure felt like it. Joe, what'd you think of how our episode began?
I thought of this first opening segment as, you know how sometimes people, when they give a review on a movie, they break up the movie into like 3 acts where they'll say, oh, the first act was good, the second act was just mediocre, and then I hated the third act. And I thought with this segment, I liked the first 2 acts, but the last part of it I didn't like, and I'll explain why. But the first part of it was Mr. McMahon coming out here with his stooges minus Pat Patterson, because Pat Patterson, I read in the Observer, his partner, Louie was his name, had a heart attack during the King of the Ring episode and died. So this is where Pat Patterson's partner, Louie, died. So he was not there tonight at Raw. instead they had Sergeant Slaughter in his place. So Vince still had his stooges. And I really liked the presentation here. I liked Mr. McMahon doing his thing. He gives the full Mr. McMahon voice when he introduces Kane. And you know what was great too was when Kane makes his entrance, they have the red light. There was a great shot of an evil looking Mr. McMahon in that red light in the ring. And I just thought it was such a good presentation. He was just
Extra
giving
visual.
just such an evil look there. And Steve Austin coming out here is act 2 for me, where he first comes out and he explains that The Undertaker's the one who busted him open, not Kane. So he deserves another shot. So I liked that. The part that lost me is where Steve Austin was begging everybody for a rematch. I didn't like that part. Like, he was begging everybody in the ring, Mr. McMahon, then Paul Bearer, and then he was begging Kane for this rematch. I think it just made him look a little bit weak. It should have just started with Undertaker busted me open, not Kane. I deserve a rematch. I'm getting it tonight. Story is over. Let's get it on. That's the part I thought was stupid, but the first part of this was really good, and it is surprising that they're leading off with this and not the Hell in a Cell, but they probably had this planned for weeks, so that's why they're starting out with this.
I thought this was all pretty damn good, starting with Vince McMahon out here introducing Kane. Bartlett, you mentioned one of the lines he said about Kane. My favorite was that Kane apparently has never consumed alcohol. And that he only raises his hand to salute America. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with it? Where has Kane showed any patriotism since his debut? But whatever.
He's a mayor
I'll take
now.
it. Yeah, that's true now. I thought that was good. Paul Bear's promo here was pretty damn good, saying that Kane has overcome all of the obstacles in his life for the last 20 years and has now surpassed his brother. Stone Cold comes out, and I did love his interaction with Vince, especially the stupid shoes comment. That one popped me for sure. But the part, Joe, I understand where you're coming from, that you didn't like his, I don't know, almost, like you said,
Begging
almost
and
begging.
pleading.
Yeah, almost begging for this. But it also, there was a hint of him playing a part to goat Kane into that. He was like, oh, you can never be as good as your brother, that type of bullshit, until he finally got Kane frustrated enough to agree to it. But I thought this all worked pretty well. It sets up this episode, and Joe, I knew that you had to be creaming that it was 20 minutes without a single wrestling move being
Absolutely.
applied.
Yeah, I'm actually pissed off that we're going to move into a wrestling match from here.
Well, without further ado, let's go into our first match of the night. Steven Regal defeats Darren Drozdov by submission in 4 minutes and 44 seconds. And Darren Drozdov, a.k.a. Droz, a.k.a. Puke, a.k.a. our jobber of the week.
Oh, no.
Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Bartlett. Yes, Droz is our jobber of the week. Droz was born Darren Alexander Drozdov on April 7th, 1969 in Mays Landing, New Jersey. He was trained by Tom Pritchard and made his in-ring debut in November of 97. He has used the ring names Darren Drozdov, Droz, and Puke. In his youth, he was a standout high school football player, making the New Jersey All-State team his senior year. He also excelled at track and field, setting a New Jersey state record for the shot put.
Sounds like a blue chipper to me.
Blue chipper indeed. And speaking of JR, after high school, as JR has reminded us a couple times, Droz attended University of Maryland, where he was a star defensive tackle, and graduated with a BS in criminal justice. He spent 3 seasons in the NFL playing for 3 different teams, the New York Jets, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Denver Broncos. It was during this time he earned the nickname Puke after vomiting directly onto the football before the other team's center was able to snap it. Sports Illustrated even wrote an article about the incident. Pro football ended up not panning out for him, though, and in 97, Droz began working with the WWF in their developmental territories while also wrestling for ECW. At ECW, Draws was part of a WWF Invader stable with Baracus, Doug Furnace, and Philip LaFawn.
Oh my God.
On May 25th, 1998, Draws made his Raw debut, showing up as a unofficial third member of LOD, and showed some promise, but was quickly put to jobber duty, which is where we're pretty much at today. And I'm not going to go into great detail about the next year of his career, not to spoil the upcoming storylines too much, but he will be involved in this ill-fated Brawl For All that started tonight. He will rejoin LOD and take part in the Hawk as an alcoholic angle, which we've talked about before. But Draws is probably best known for his appearance in the wrestling documentary Beyond the Mat, where in a meeting with Vince McMahon, Vince asks Draws to vomit on command into a trash bin. And McMahon famously screams, he's gonna puke, immortalizing those words in any wrestling fan's minds. In 1999, Draws was ranked number 142 on the PWI's top 500 wrestler list, putting him 358 spots ahead of Mr. 500 Duke the Dumpster Droese.
Wow.
So that's an accomplishment. 1999 is also where things take a tragic turn for Draws. During the taping of the October 5th episode of WWF SmackDown, in a match with D'Lo Brown, Draws was paralyzed after a botched powerbomb. Draws has repeatedly said the incident was an accident and that he holds no animosity towards Brown for the injury, stating his loose-fitting shirt did not allow D'Lo to gain a proper grip on Draws, which in turn did not allow Draws to execute a proper jump up to aid Brown into position for the powerbomb, resulting in Draws landing on his head and fracturing 2 vertebrae. As a result of his injuries, Draws required 24-hour in-home care, but was able to regain some degree of independence with the help of medical staff and a customized tank-like wheelchair designed and financed by his close college friend and Under Armour founder, Kevin Plank. Draws continued to work for the WWE as a writer and columnist, and was also a reoccurring guest on WWE Bite This Internet show. Unfortunately, things get even sadder, and on June 30th, 2023, Darren Drozdoff died of natural causes at the age of 54. By all accounts, he was a great guy that had a very tragic end to his life and career. Draws' career record is 45 wins, 86 losses, and 8 draws.
Sounds like a really solid dude for not holding any like going to bat for D'Lo, the guy that accidentally paralyzed him.
Yeah.
Yep. Many people would be bitter about that.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't D'Lo's fault. You know,
Yeah.
It's very easy to pass that blame.
It also seems as though he was bred to be a jobber, since they put him with Baracus and Furnace and LaFawn.
Well, did we ever see Baracus? We saw the promos or the vignettes or whatever, and then it just went away.
They said, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
He must have been on Superstars.
Maybe.
I just blame everything on Superstars anymore. I don't even know if it's still airing at this point in 98. Thank you, Ryan. Good to get that background info on Draws here because, and like you highlighted, the work isn't the problem.
No.
It's the stories, the angles that they're putting them in. Well, let's get to it here.
This match.
Yeah, right. After Draws came out for his entrance, Sable's music hit.
Wow.
And she came out in a slightly more revealing catsuit than the last one she wore. I'm guessing the scars are starting to heal. And then she announced out Steven Regal. JR did a really great job of putting over Regal's bona fides there, but I'm hoping that the cock edited out whatever music Regal originally came out with, because the music that we heard here for his entrance was fucking horrible. Didn't suit him at all. And then, as things continued to get worse, Sable joined commentary, which led to split screen. On one half of the screen, we had Sable repeating, "No comment," on the questions JR was asking her. On the other half, we were robbed of a good view of what was going on in the ring. And I actually thought the work in the ring looked pretty good. That's no surprise from Regal, of course. Draws, pleasant surprise given what was probably a clash of styles for the two and definitely a clash of experience levels. When Lawler on commentary asked Sable why she was sitting by JR, she replied with, "This was the only seat available at the time."
Sorry, no comment.
Regal did look a little pudgy in this, though.
He did.
Hopefully he'll be hitting the gym. He was never like a jacked guy, but he needs to get in better shape than what he was in here.
He's looking a bit road dog in here tonight.
Eventually, Regal got a neat-looking hold that JR called a version of the guillotine on Draws, and that is where this ended. I was torn on this. From what we could see of it, the match looked good. Regal, for all of his weight gain there, he didn't look too bad. Not too much ring rust after sitting out for a while. Draws looked good. The split screen wasn't good. Regal's debut looked good. Regal's physique didn't. Draws' ring work looked good. His future doesn't, if this is what they're going to do with him. So, a lot of contradictions here. Joe, what'd you have on it?
Well, again, it's a good thing that Sable had looks and money for boob jobs because she can't read or use any personality whatsoever. To use her as a ring announcer was just a bad idea, and then putting her on commentary was even worse. She can't even, fake flirt at the table. It's just so awkward to listen to.
JR didn't know what to do with her.
No.
Yeah, it's real bad. At least when Sunny was there, she would do a little flirting with the guys. But man, Sable just has no personality whatsoever. It's pretty rough. But Tim White is God sign in the crowd. I loved that. I popped for that. And Regal has a unique style. Yeah. It is fun to watch. If you like technical wrestling, he has a unique style. And I hate to say this, I'm going to be the bearer of bad news again, but I'm pretty sure he's going to have a pretty bad injury pretty soon, probably because of being so out of shape. But I think we're going to be missing him for a while shortly after this, but we'll see.
If your body wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it Draws. My God, he's only been there for a month and he's already getting jobbed out. It's just, you hate to see it.
Yeah, they really did not give him long at all before they decided to put the kibosh on his push and just make him a jobber. And even sadder than that is this match. He's a jobber there, but we don't even pay attention to it because it's all on robotic Sable. And the fact that they had her repeat these same lines over and over again in that robotic tone, that monotone, lifeless fucking voice that she has. We know what she sounds like at this point, right? Why would you put her on commentary? If you're going to put her out there, march her around for everyone to look at the new product that she spent her money on. All right, that's fine. You know what I mean? Get the cheap pop. But why the fuck would you put her on commentary? It just sucked the life out of this match. I agree that the action in the ring was pretty solid. It was a little bit slow at times, which I chalk up to Regal's physique, but overall, a pretty decent match. Even that half Nelson guillotine figure 4 thing that he put on at the end, that was pretty cool, but they really did all they could to handicap this match by carting Sable down here.
Yeah. Whenever she said this was the only seat available at the time, I had flashbacks to Tall Man in the Volkswagen. This was the only vehicle that I could afford. Because I was forced to think of more entertaining things than Sable. All right, let's get the hell away from that. That sucks about Steven Regal, though. I always liked him, and I was hoping that we'd get at least a bit of a run out of him here. Joe, is that injury why he spends more time as a commissioner than as a wrestler?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure when he became commissioner.
Yeah, I can't remember when
I know
that
we're going
happened.
to get Commissioner HBK pretty soon, but I'm not sure when Regal was.
Okay. I have more memories of him as a commissioner than I have of him as a wrestler in the WWF.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on to your butts, everybody, because we are entering the time of the Brawl For All. And we're going to get into that a little more throughout the episode. We got a view of Mark Marrow backstage here doing some jump rope work, training like the legit boxer that he is. JR mentioned here that he was going to be competing in the Brawl For All, which at this point, we got no further detail or explanation. And just this view of Marrow and JR saying the phrase Brawl For All, nothing else. We also found out that the show is being sponsored by both 1-800-COLLECT and 10-10-321,
Yeah.
which really seems like a conflict of interest.
Which one should we use?
Can you stack 10-10-321 on 1-800-COLLECT?
I don't think so. I think they were two different services.
Was that a hack that people used?
Does make you wonder, though, were they both owned by the same company?
Yeah, right. It's the only way that could have been okay from
Right.
their eyes, I think. After that, Michael Cole was in the ring to introduce Ken Shamrock, the 1998 King of the Ring. And man, Kenny did not shine in this. These long-form promos are not his forte. Kenny got interrupted by Owen Hart, who was an improvement on the microphone, coming out to challenge Kenny to a king-on-king match tonight. I instantly got worried that Jerry Lawler would somehow get involved. Kenny fumbled through his response until Triple H came out to assert his status as a king, and Kenny just kept on fucking it up. But the end result of all of this is a 3-way King of Kings triple threat match later on tonight. That was followed by a view of Steve Blackman in the back, shadowboxing in preparation for his Brawl For All match. And here is where we got some additional details on just what the Brawl For All is, with a handy screen graphic. If you think boxing, you wouldn't be too far off. It's not the same, but at least the rules as they are presented here in this episode, as far as they go, there are 3 one-minute rounds. There is a points-based system, and that's based on number of punches, takedowns, and knockdowns, and a knockout is an instant win. That's what we know so far. They also slightly modified the ring to more closely resemble a boxing ring for these matches. And that more or less sums it up. It's supposedly going to be a boxing-wrestling hybrid, according to the King. And now that we've got our King of Kings triple threat match set, we can move on to the next match, but we'll pause it here. I gotta ask, Ryan, are you as morbidly curious as I am to rewatch the lead up to the end of Bart Gunn's career?
I am. If anyone hasn't listened, actually, I don't have it on hand, the exact episode. It was a pay-per-view, though. I do remember Bart Gunn was our first and only Jobber of the Week on a pay-per-view episode. But in that, I lay out his ultimate demise in this competition, not the actual competition, but the aftermath of it. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward, like you said, morbidly to what's going to happen there. The segment, though, setting up this King of Kings match, I like the idea of everyone that's involved here. A triple threat match with Shamrock, Owen, and Triple H. That sounds like a pretty damn entertaining match, so I'm happy about that. But my lord, did Kenny struggle through this on the mic. Every time he spoke, Shamrock he knows how to wrestle. He knows how to look like $1 million, but put that mic in front of him, and by God, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing he can wrestle, because he's basically, without that, he's basically the male version of Sable in some ways. He is god-awful on the mic, and there is just no getting around it. They need to never put him in a position like this again. There's just no getting around it. It's so bad. And you could tell even Triple H was like, come on, spit it out. Spit it out. Like, you could just tell the look on his face.
Don't ruin this segment.
Yeah, it was so bad. But I don't know. King of Kings, although I'm not a fan of triple threat matches, I think the talent involved is good enough to keep me entertained. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys on that. The talent involved, I'm good. Triple threat, not as much, but we'll see. If anybody can carry it, it's going to be those 3. So, with the background of the Brawl For All laid out for us, let's go into our next match. Steve Blackman defeats Mark Marrow by points in 3 rounds in a Brawl For All match. I'm so looking forward to treating this like an autopsy. You guys have no idea. So I was a little irritated that we didn't have a bracket for this, but I also wasn't surprised at that because we haven't had much information on what the Brawl For All is. They didn't even use the word tournament at all.
Bro.
In the breakdown going into this match. Very, very ambiguous as to what's going on here besides the information that was just given to us in the previous segment. There's also only one music for entrances in this, and I hated that. It kind of strips away the character of our competitors, in my opinion. That and their drab boxing clothing that they have to wear out here. With the exception of Mero, because he's a boxer gimmick. And in this match, we had what many Attitude Era guys describe as one of the biggest legit badasses to ever step in the ring, Steve Blackman, and Mero, a legit 3-time New York State Golden Gloves champion. It's really hard to imagine how anybody not named Vince Russo thought that this was a good idea. Like, how did this ever make it out of a pitch room? And not only that, how did these two wind up in the very first match for it? The booing started almost immediately.
Justifiably.
Mero was trying to box while Blackman went for the points on takedowns. That was smart as hell, and I loved it. As soon as I saw the first takedown, I was like, oh shit, so that's how this one's going to be. It was proven in the first break. It was showing Blackman leading Mero 25-0 on the points. And in the end, I wound up just laughing every time Blackman did a takedown on Mero because he just did it. He was spamming the A button throughout this whole match. He just kept on taking him down and kept on racking up the points. I started laughing even harder when the crowd started chanting, "We want wrestling." The booing continued up to the finish. Both Blackman and Mero looked disgusted with this by the time that this segment ended. And like I said, Blackman won on points. It was a very anticlimactic thing that they did to announce that in the ring, and they both got the hell out of there as quick as they could. So I knew this was going to be bad, and I know it's going to get worse. But I was surprised at how obviously bad this was immediately, and how the crowd also immediately went to hating it. They had zero tolerance and zero patience for this. But I do have to say that I am really looking forward to watching more of this train wreck, specifically how the competitors look and act in it, because let's face it, based on all of the contemporary podcasts that we've listened to, nobody liked this idea except for Vince fucking Russo. None of the workers certainly liked it. And just a very basic fact, and if you've never been in a fight in your life before, you might not know this, but shoot fights never look good. They never, ever look good. And it seems like just everybody involved here knows it. The competitors, commentary, the ring people, the camera guy, like everybody knows that this looks like absolute shit. That'll continue on later tonight, but man, I'm genuinely excited to be talking about the Brawl For All, because this is one of those things that, looking back 25 years later, give or take, I don't remember any of these qualifier matches. I don't remember any of the lead up to Bart Gunn's career ending, and I'm really happy to be revisiting it. So, Ryan, what'd you have on this match?
I don't have many notes, because there wasn't really many notes to take about this. By all accounts, this was just a real fight or boxing or whatever the fuck they want to call it out there, but this should have lent to Mark Mero's strengths, right? As you stated, a 3 times Golden Glove winner. He should have been able to go in there and kick the shit out of Blackman. But because of these rules, Blackman very smartly just goes for takedowns, and that's all we fucking see in this is takedown after takedown after takedown, and I was booing right along with the crowd almost immediately. I don't blame Blackman for doing what he did here. These are the rules. This is a real tournament. They were told they were going to get a push if they win it, so he did the smart thing and knew that he was a better mat wrestler than Mark Mero was, and just kept on taking to the ground. But this was one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. I know I'm going to hate this entire tournament. Like you, I did not expect to despise the very first one as much as I did. Just right out of the hole, I fucking hate everything about this.
Yeah, just from what we've heard from stories on YouTube, and Dark Side of the Ring had an episode on this, is that this was a huge skid mark on the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the Brawl for All. I only remember highlights, like Bart Gunn kind of mowing through everybody and then getting destroyed by Butterbean at WrestleMania. But that's really all I remember from it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how bad it really is. And Bartlett, you mentioned something that really makes a lot of sense. You talk about their music. It kind of strips away their character. And that's really the worst part of this, is that it strips away their character. Mark Marrow just teamed up with Jackie a couple weeks ago, and we've been working on that story. And now we're pressing pause on that, which just doesn't make sense in the long-term storytelling aspect. Now, Mark Marrow lost, so obviously he can go back to being Marvelous Mark Marrow now, but still, it's just, what a ridiculous concept. Vince Russo gets blamed for this, like he should, but Vince McMahon is the one who gives the ultimate okay on this, and I can't believe that he did. And we can already see why this is a terrible idea. It's not exciting. There's already that "We Want Wrestling" chant from the crowd on the first match. After this episode of Raw, I'm surprised they didn't pull the plug on it.
Yes.
Steve Blackman, it almost reminded me of watching a Brock Lesnar UFC fight. Blackman just has way more strength than Marrow, more size, and so he took advantage of it, and it was just boring. It was not exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and Joe, I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's not necessarily surprising that Vince Russo was able to talk McMahon into doing this. What's surprising is that after this episode, they didn't just pretend like it never happened.
Right. No one would have realized. If next week they just stopped talking about it, there wouldn't have been a single person going, well, what happened to the Brawl for All?
Like you asked what happened to Brackus.
Right.
I can't remember exact names. I'm pretty sure Severn and Shamrock have said it, but the Superstars roster that's going to be taking part in this, there are a handful of legit fighters, such as these two. Marrow Bryan, like you said, he got hamstrung by this takedown rule. Blackman, we all know Blackman's like a fucking 90th degree black belt or whatever, so like he's for real. But all of the real fighters knew at the outset that this wasn't going to be good, it wasn't going to look good, and they wanted to be in and out of it as quickly as possible. So I'm inspired to go and start looking things up on it to see, was Marrow one of those? Like how Shamrock and Severn never wanted to have a match together because they didn't want to ruin that mystique. How many of these fighters didn't want to take part in this because of just how bad they knew it was going to look? An ongoing autopsy, and we'll have another one of these matches later on tonight, but just so morbidly excited to see it. After that, we were backstage with Kevin "Oh My God" Kelly outside of Kane's locker room, and I guess Kane will soon be telling us in his own words why he accepted the rematch challenge. After that was a Skittles Slam of the Week, showing us what happened at the King of the Ring last night, that scene that we missed because Vader came down to interrupt the Owen Hart match. Back in the locker room, Kane was there with Kevin Kelly again, and Kane had his Goozle vibrator, and I don't know what was going on with it, but I was mostly unable to understand what he was saying there, something about his reasoning. But we also got a view of some unnamed person walking across the parking lot to the arena. I wasn't able to see who that was. Did you guys recognize it?
I thought it was clearly DOA member Undertaker coming in.
Yes, Mr. Sweatpants.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, but they acted like they didn't know who it was, and I was like, well, I mean, that could be, that looked like the Undertaker. It looked like American Badass Undertaker in his sweatpants, like you said, but yeah. All right, so it doesn't matter, because it never came up again anyway. We just assumed that Undertaker's been here the whole time later on, so. But that's it. This was a brief segment. Joe, do you know what the hell Kane was talking about here? With the thing on his throat?
I don't, but this was our Mankind cameo that we got.
Yeah.
But also, the Slam of the Week pissed me off because it just reminded me of how much we hated that Vader run-in.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton here. I was able to make out a couple words from Kane. At the end, I heard him say that he is a greater champion than his brother ever was.
Okay.
That was part of his reasoning.
We'll find out that is false later tonight.
I did love seeing Mankind here, even though he had a fanny pack on. But after Paul Bearer berates oh my God, Kelly for asking Kane why he granted Stone Cold a rematch immediately. He hollers at Kelly, and then we're left with Mankind kind of reassuring Kelly that he didn't do anything wrong. So I thought the segment worked, but it was short.
Yeah. All right, let's keep it going to our next match. Val Venis defeats Dick Togo with Yamaguchi-san by pinfall in 3 minutes. Dick Togo got the jobber treatment at the start of this. Thought that was funny. And I was about to type out a note on how if you have to have a jobber for Val, Dick Togo isn't bad in that role, and I was going to try to make a joke about it, but then fucking Dustin Runnels came down to commentary dressed like he had just left a fucking church bake sale. I'm talking khaki shorts, a polo shirt with a pattern that looked like moldy bathroom tile. It was fucking horrible. Even when he tries to dress up, he looks like fucking garbage. Dustin went straight to talking about God on commentary. We even got a split screen to show us the conviction in his fucking eyes. But then Dustin started talking about Val Venis' lifestyle, and I kind of started to get it a little bit. I was like, oh, is this going to be that angle for Val that I was asking for a couple weeks ago? Val ended up winning the match with the money shot. And then he went to shake the salami in front of Yamaguchi-san's extremely hot wife that was sitting in the front row. Yamaguchi-san did not care for that. All of Kaientai ended up trying to rush Val, but Val had a steel chair and dished out headshots. JR yelled, "Everybody got a little!" And I popped for that. And that's where this wore down. Now, I did a little extra research on Mrs. Yamaguchi-san here, as I am wont to do when we have a good-looking lady
She a wrestler?
Has a cameo. No, rather than finding what I usually find in cases like this.
Nudes.
Right, exactly. Prior to this, she was a model, but a high-fashion model. Her name is Xian Li Sang. I hope I'm saying that right. So after her short stint here in the WWF, she went on to get a couple of degrees, including a doctorate.
Whoa.
She worked in high corporate positions for Coach and Dick's Sporting Goods. She's written several articles. She's a university professor.
Damn.
And currently resides in Pittsburgh.
Oh,
so
I was going to say working for Dick's. That's based out of Pittsburgh.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was all extremely awesome for somebody that is roped into a fucking story with Val Venis like
I think
this.
it's extremely awesome for Yamaguchi-san to marry into that.
Well, and as we learned, he is a high member of society or whatever, right? When they first introduced him, he's some highfalutin businessman.
A blue chipper in the business world.
Yeah.
So I loved this match. I thought the work was great. It wasn't a match of the year candidate by any means, but as far as jobbers go, Dick to Go is pretty...
Dick to Go.
I like calling him Dick to Go. Feel like it plays off of the porn star.
Yeah. That's
Val,
a better... Sounds more like you would call that a dildo. It seems like another word for a dildo, a dick to go. Like a portable dick.
Maybe Dick to Go is the Japanese word for dildo. I like that we're developing Val here. He's heading into this thing with Yamaguchi-san, but that also confuses me a little when it comes to the very forgettable Christian Dustin Runnels, because I feel like that's going to come into play eventually too. But anyway, Joe, you accurately called the coming of this angle. What did you think of this match?
Yeah, I think we're getting into the choppy your pee-pee angle that's coming up here, and that's exciting. I'm not sure how they're going to weave Dustin Runnels into this. We'll see how that goes.
I have a feeling they're not. I think we're just going to forget about that.
Dustin probably should have borrowed Vince's shoes from earlier in the night, make himself look a little bit better here. But the part that I enjoyed with this whole thing the most was when Val basically gives Yamaguchi-san and everyone else CTE with that chair, and Yamaguchi-san's wife is just sitting there. Doesn't move. You would think that if that was his wife, that she would jump the railing and make sure everybody's okay, but she just sat there. It was hilarious.
I thought this was pretty great. And to really start it off, do either of you remember a new wrestler coming in and without any prior fame? He didn't build his name up at any other promotion, but any newcomer that is getting the pop and reaction that Val Venis is out of this crowd. No. It really just shows just how juvenile and degenerate this audience were at the time. There's Val Venis signs all through the crowd, like suck my Venus.
Yeah.
Val's my pal. It's pretty unbelievable. In such a short amount of time, he's been able to build up such a fan base. And he gives a pretty great innuendo-heavy, cheap pop monologue here, telling this Cleveland crowd that they obviously follow the Cleveland Indians, their baseball team. He makes some reference about choking up on his bat and swinging for the balls. Like, he laid it out, and this crowd was fucking sucking it up. The match with Togo was pretty solid. You said, Bartlett, Togo's probably a good jobber to put him in there with. He's the biggest guy of Kai and Tai, and I thought did a pretty damn good job in there with Val. Unfortunately, we did have the spot with Dustin Reynolds. He says he's here to spread the word of God. For fuck's sakes, like, can you suck the wind out of a match more than have a guy come out here and fucking start talking about Sunday school bullshit? But thankfully, that didn't last that long. They threw the 2-bit Jake the Snake out of ringside, and we were able to focus on the ending part of this match, setting up this feud with Val, as you very correctly stated, shaking the salami in Yamaguchi-san's wife's face as she sheepishly looked away and looked like she was blushing a little bit. One of the little bit of the big Valboski there, I think. And we're going to see where that goes, and I'm excited for that. And I'm also excited to forget about Dustin Reynolds. Like, just get him the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. Let me ask you guys something, because I thought of this during Val's entrance in this match. It occurred to me that Val, his mannerisms, and to a lesser extent what he says, he's almost like a babyface Rick Rude in what he's doing, how he's interacting, the hip gyrating.
He's basically turning the volume up to 11 on Rick Rude because because it's 10 years later or whatever.
It's the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we got a quick look at the graphic for the next pay-per-view. That's going to be In Your House, Fully Loaded. That's a little under a month away. We went to Michael Cole after that. He was with Stone Cold Steve Austin in the locker room, and Austin just called Cole a jackass and kicked him out of the locker room.
Don't forget, Edge was lurking up in the rafters, ready to put someone else in the hospital.
He was. He does nothing in this episode, but damn it, he's hanging out in the crowd. And that's it for this. It was a quick one, so let's go into our next match. Ken Shamrock defeats Owen Hart and Triple H with Chyna by pinfall in 12 minutes and 50 seconds in a King of Kings triple threat match. Kenny really slowly jump-started this on the ramp coming in behind Owen. Try was just hanging out in the ring waiting for it to get to him. Eventually they did make it into the ring where we had Owen Hart versus Triple H in there for a minute for what feels like the umpteenth fucking time. That was the one thing that kind of had me down on this, is I really didn't want to have those two mixing it up. There was something going on with the ring bell at one point. The whole crowd stood up to look. The bell got rang out of turn. The wrestlers ignored it, but it seemed like a bit of a kerfuffle or something over there. I'm really curious as to what that was all about. We got no explanation.
I like the King throwing in, is Mr. McMahon somewhere near?
I don't want to detract from the match at all in this, because the action was pretty good for a triple threat. It was fast-paced, it was well-worked, but for me at least, the commentary was the standout facet here. I loved JR talking about Triple H being on Dream Street, as well as talking about the triple headlock that we missed during a commercial break. I also really liked referee Mike Chioda sliding in to get between Owen Hart and Chyna. That was just a great, well-timed visual. He was just slid in there smooth as silk to get between them. Eventually, The Rock came down and nailed Triple H with the IC title belt. I didn't know if that was to give Owen the advantage or what here. It didn't work, though, because that gave Ken the victory. He pinned Triple H there in the ring. But then the Nation and DX erupted into a fight up at the top of the ramp, and it just devolved from there. We got a view of Owen trying and failing to do the corner post sharpshooter on Kenny. That made me sad, if I'm being honest. And that's where this ended. And while this was not a masterclass in triple threats, it was a pretty good way to fill 12 minutes and 50 seconds on our screens. So, Ryan, what'd you think of it?
I'm not super high on triple threat matches, or gimmick matches in general can be a little bit tough to swallow sometimes. But these three guys put on a pretty damn good show, I thought. And not shocking, these are all Hall of Famers as far as it goes. Maybe not all on the mic as it comes to Ken Shamrock, but in the wrestling ring, these guys know what they're doing. And I found myself pretty entertained throughout the entire thing. And this match, as well as one that's coming up a little bit later, really felt like pay-per-view level matches. This isn't a match of the year candidate by any means, but 12 minutes with these three guys in a triple threat match, like that's something that I don't think anyone would be disappointed of seeing on a pay-per-view, right?
Yeah.
So that part of it I thought was really pretty cool. And then the way it ended, we bring The Rock out, we get him involved in this, a hell of a lot of star power involved in this match. It ended in pandemonium between the two factions here, but if this is setting up a feud with The Rock and Triple H, I'm on board for that. That seems damn good in my opinion. So I thought this did its job. Really, the only part of it that I rolled my eyes at was the triple sleeper. That was a little bit ham-fisted. I was like, all right, guys, come on. We don't need to get that ridiculous. And that ended in a triple jawbreaker. I always hate these chain moves. It seems like modern day wrestling really likes to use these a lot. But to me, it really slams me out of kayfabe when I see shit like this. And it just goes, oh, here's comedy. Don't try and take this serious. But other than that, I had a fun time watching this. I liked it.
You guys bring up really good points, but I fucking hated this. I really just don't like triple threat matches, so I really need them to give me more valuable story when they do something like this. And something weird happened at the beginning. You mentioned it, Bartlett, with the ring bell. Before the bell rang, inadvertently, people started yelling and pointing towards the commentary table. I wonder if a fan jumped the railing or something. And
that's what it seems like.
Yeah. So something weird happened. I hated the triple sleeper hold thing. The Rock comes out in loafers and destroys Triple H, but his fellow Nation member, Owen Hart, doesn't win the match. So I didn't like that part of it either. And yeah, seeing Owen struggle to apply the figure four around the post, you're right, it's sad, but even more so, it shows what a technical talent his brother Brett is.
Yeah.
Him doing it is just flawless every time. So yeah, Owen needs to work on that, but I just don't like triple threat matches. I didn't like this.
I wonder if Kenny's legs were maybe a little too bulky to be able to wrap up around the ring. Too much juice flowing.
Yeah, Joe, I think you had a great point there. This, and it ties into what you were saying, Ryan, about this kind of feeling like a pay-per-view match. This is something that you use to blow off an angle, not start an angle.
Right.
I agree. And while I did think it was entertaining and I didn't really find too much at fault with it, I totally get where you're coming from with that. But in the end, I'd rather have this on our screens than some of the other things.
Than Vader.
DOA versus Los Barriquos in a strap match or something.
So after that, commentary was talking about how The Undertaker is going to be coming out to give everyone a confession, and Taker indeed started coming out to meet Michael Cole there in the ring. Undertaker clarified here that he wasn't costing Austin the championship so much as trying to prevent his little brother from killing himself via self-immolation in front of a live television audience.
Seems believable.
I think is understandable. That's pretty logical, I think. Vince McMahon came out, though, and accused Taker of forcing a title change because Taker can beat Kane for the belt, but Taker cannot beat Austin for the belt, which I also thought made perfect sense. That was some great subterfuge there from Vince. Vince also called The Undertaker the single most vile, contemptible, and evil person the devil has ever placed on this earth.
That's a good word for the podcast to close out. Contemptible.
I've already got one for tonight, but I'll add it to the list. After that, Vince also warned The Undertaker not to interfere in the title match tonight. We got a JVC kaboom of the week. That was Mankind getting thrown 20 feet straight down into the Spanish announce table.
Only mention of the match.
That's it.
No big deal.
That's all. 3 seconds on a mid-match segment. And that was followed by a view of first Bradshaw and then Mark Canterbury, a.k.a. Henry Godwin.
Who?
prepping for their upcoming Brawl For All match, so we're going to pause it here. We got some pretty tough talk from Vince here. Feels like we're getting another layer added to the story, another conspirator against Austin. Joe, what did you have on this segment?
Well, I love the interview with Undertaker, and the reason why is because they're tickling our taint again with Undertaker and Kane possibly teaming up here shortly. Yeah. And Undertaker, one of my favorite parts from the King of the Ring match, main event match, was when Undertaker just soaked Earl Hebner in gasoline. And we're like, why did he do that? I don't get that. But he told us that he did everything that he did so that his brother wouldn't set himself on fire. So he's getting rid of the gasoline. And what better way to do it than to just pour it all over Dave Hebner? I thought this was good storytelling from The Undertaker. Good fallout from the night before for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a perfect little segment. You bring Undertaker in so the crowd gets to see him, even though you're not going to put him in a match tonight. But he explains his actions last night, and they're very believable. They're understandable. He didn't want his brother to die. I think anyone could understand that as to why he would nail Stone Cold with that. So McMahon coming out and threatening Undertaker, telling him not to interrupt tonight or else. It was very short and sweet and to the point, but it worked.
Yeah, speaking of working, let's go into our next match. Bradshaw defeats Mark Canterbury by points in 3 rounds in a Brawl For All match. Kenny Powers looked pretty badass coming down when he's not dressed like a gangster from the 80s. We've always said that Henry Godwinn looked good.
He's a good wrestler.
Yeah, and thank Christ Bradshaw wasn't wearing his assless chaps. We got that at least. This was definitely not Blackman and Marrow. This was a couple of big guys throwing haymakers with every swing. It was sloppy as hell, and it just highlighted the fact that unless you're a trained martial artist, you can't just take somebody down unless they help you do it. I have no idea how the fuck they scored the first round as 5-0 in favor of Bradshaw, because this was looking
land is probably how.
I couldn't see it because this looked like a fucking slap fight between two women. They were just flailing and going at it and just throwing everything into every swing. Bradshaw did get a clean punch right on the button at the end of the second round. That was funny. This time, though, the crowd erupted into a chant of boring, so they were changing it up. Bradshaw did not look happy about his victory, and nobody bothered to check in with Mark Canterbury to see what he thought, so... Like I said earlier, the Brawl For All will continue to get worse, and so it has, here in this match.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
At least Blackman was able to skillfully get takedown points on Marrow earlier. It was cheap, but it was funny in its own way. This was just an ugly pile of shit that made everybody look fucking horrible. So, Joe, what did you think of it?
Yeah, this one looked like if you gave a couple of drunk guys at a Waffle House some boxing gloves at 2 o'clock in the morning. This was pretty terrible. And if this doesn't make you, as the booker, want to pull the plug on this event, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
My first question is, who the fuck is Mark Canterbury? They introduce him. That kind of highlights your point from earlier, Joe, about how they're just throwing the whole wrestling aspect of things out the window. We're not calling him Henry O. Godwinn. We're not calling him a member of fucking Justice or whatever the fuck that stupid tag team was.
Mark Dingleberry.
Yeah, he's just out here as Mark Dingleberry, and he doesn't know how to box. I mean, that is blatantly clear through all 3 rounds, and Bradshaw doesn't know much better. Maybe just a smidge in the fact that he was able to pull out the victory here, but by God, this is just terrible, terrible shit. By the end of this, as you just stated, how they didn't pull the plug is beyond me, because both of these matches, you had the crowd chanting boring or wrestling. Like, they're just begging you, stop with this. We don't want to watch this. but they're going to continue week after week into pay-per-view, and it's astonishing. I don't know what else to really say.
Yeah, this one was that was especially ugly.
Yeah, worse than the first.
Bowling shoe ugly, as JR would say.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going. Get the hell away from that. Kevin Kelly was backstage again. He was waiting to talk to The Undertaker about what happened with Vince earlier. Again, Edge was skulking around in the crowd. And after that, the Legion of Doom came out next. I wasn't really sure if they were still LOD 2000 or what, but Sunny was conspicuous in her absence, according to JR. Under the weather, as they say.
Is she not officially gone yet?
No, I have news on that, actually.
Oh,
She's not officially gone, no.
I thought they were just joking about her being gone because she was a train wreck of a person at that point.
I figured, though, if she was gone, they would just forget about it and never talk about it again. So
that's a good point. Animal got on the microphone to introduce Paul Ellering, the former manager of the LOD, back when they were good.
Precious Paul.
Made sure to highlight that he was the reason that they were good 15 years ago. I laughed when Hawk on the mic said that times have been tough for the LOD. No shit, Hawk. Thank you. But I then started violently puking as soon as I heard the motorcycles fire up. And this was a swerve, bro, because Paul Ellering is managing DOA now.
Ugh.
And a brawl erupted in the ring. We left for a commercial break, and after coming back, Kevin Kelly had found The Undertaker, who, when asked about Vince's warning not to interfere, only said that nobody tells him what to do. And that's what ended this segment. So I got a small nostalgia pop for Paul Ellering. It was neat to see him, but then the DOA had to come out and take a dump on my head. I hated this segment, and the fact that we've got two tag teams that aren't going anywhere or doing anything other than each other. It's just fucking pathetic. It is fucking pathetic. And I don't want to see LOD in this light. We talked about it whenever they first came back. What was that, about a year ago now at this point?
At least, yeah.
We were happy about that. We were riding high on the nostalgia pop for them, but it went downhill real fast. And all this is a case of you either, how's the saying go? You die early and stay the hero, or you live long enough to become the villain. Well, these guys are sticking around long enough to fucking suck. And it needs to stay the fuck off of our screens. Ryan, what'd you have on this segment?
I couldn't agree anymore. The moment I saw LOD come out, sans Sunny, why? Like, I haven't cared about LOD for over 6 months at this point. And how are you going to make me care about them even less? Let's start another feud with the fucking DOA, who is now not really the DOA. They've been whittled down to just the stupid ass Nazi fuck brothers. There's no chains, there's no crush left. It's just those two fucks together. And they're going to have a feud with LOD. Just fuck me.
I'm a big Paul Ellering fan. I do like him. I like the gimmicks that he brings to the ring. He had a Wall Street Journal with him, so I love that. But you do something like this when you want to put a fresh paint of coat, as Bruce Pritchard would say, on somebody. And why would you do that with the DOA? Of all teams or wrestlers, why would you do that with the DOA?
This will make them better.
Right.
Clearly going nowhere fast.
Garbage.
I just... I'm getting nauseous all over again.
He's gonna puke.
Let's get the hell away from that and get into our final match of the night. Stone Cold Steve Austin defeats Kane with Paul Bearer by pinfall in 8 minutes and 26 seconds to win the WWF Championship. We didn't have much in terms of hype going into this. We had all of the events of the episode leading up to this, but we pretty much just went straight into this after seeing Austin lacing his boots up. And this started off pretty good. I had high hopes for this given the talent and given the time that we were going to be in there. And I just sat back and enjoyed it. The action was constant. There really wasn't any slow points up until close to the end. It looked good. It wasn't overdone. They weren't trying too hard for things. They were just flowing through it. I loved JR talking about Austin's titanium testicles. Commentary in general was hitting it out of the park tonight, and I would like to credit that to Lawler being on color all night. JR was on fire throughout this whole episode, and I really do think it's because he had Lawler there with him the whole time. I think they built that momentum together throughout the episode, and it really paid off. So Ryan, like you said earlier, I'm really hoping that it stays here now for the next couple years.
Yeah.
The crowd was just as into this match as I was. They were following every hit, following every slam. And just as we went into a headlock, The Undertaker started making his way down the ramp to stand at ringside. He was looking menacing there. Stone Cold ended up getting a great series into a stunner. I loved Paul Bearer losing his shit opposite the hard camera during the pinfall. That was great. The Undertaker went into the ring and started to approach Austin, but then The Undertaker got a stunner for his troubles. And Kane and The Undertaker did a simultaneous sit-up, which was a great visual. We got a final view of Kane and The Undertaker standing in the ring while Austin was at the top of the ramp flipping off both of them. Then we got some extra attitude. Kane and The Undertaker started going at it in the ring after Austin was gone. It looked like we missed the part where fans threw all of their styrofoam heads into the ring, which that kind of annoyed me. I would have liked to have seen that. But after choke slamming Kane, The Undertaker went after Paul Bearer. He bumped Paul on the ramp there a little bit and then left, and Paul was left to screech in dismay as he followed Kane's exit, and we faded to black. So, guys, the single biggest jobber in the history of the WWF. Kane held this specific title once and only once. It was for 24 hours, and it's the stuff that inside jokes are made of. I thought the match itself was pretty good. It was solidly entertaining. We got a rare title change on Raw, and Austin can go back to popping the crowd with the belt now. So, Ryan, please get us going on our final match in the way that Raw ended tonight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I thought this was thoroughly enjoyable. And to touch on the why Kane didn't get Jobber of the Week here, I think I explained before, he is the champ here. So to say he's being a true jobber is a bit of a push. Not to mention, I have a very specific point where Kane will probably get Jobber of the Week. And I don't know if you remember moving forward, but in the early 2000s, he's going to lose to Hurricane Helms in a match. And that is going to be the point where I probably give Kane Jobber of the Week, because that's a pretty humiliating loss. But this match, let's forget about the future here and let's talk about the now. This was damn entertaining, and JR said this crowd was jacked, and he was 100% correct. They were loud as fuck. Like, you could just hear them over commentary, the excitement that they had, and it started off strong. I mean, I was a bit surprised that Austin was the aggressor at the beginning. You would have thought the monster Kane would have been the person to get the hand up at the beginning of the match, but I guess he's not a monster anymore, right? He's an oddity, so I guess we can allow that. But really, everything about this was just like the triple threat match that I mentioned. This is like pay-per-view level, extremely pay-per-view level. It's for the title. It's for the heavyweight title. It's a long match. Undertaker came down, but ultimately didn't really end in shenanigans. We had a clean end to it, and a title change for the heavyweight belt. I don't think that has ever happened on Raw as far as I remember, right? A title of this seriousness changing hands on Raw, like, that's a first. And that is a way to bring people back watching Raw. That is an amazing thing that now there's a chance you could see a title change not on a pay-per-view. Like, that is an amazing revelation for fans that was pretty genius, I think, on WWF's part. It's sad for Kane that he only had the title for 24 hours. Maybe they could at least allow him to hold it on for a week, but no, 24 hours later and he's got to cough it up. But I thought they did a damn good job here, and one of the best endings to Raw you could have. This is main event level shit. The extra attitude stuff, we have the Undertaker and Kane fighting, but going back just a little bit to the double sit-up, it lends to what you were saying earlier, Joe, the tease of the Brother of Destruction, right? Because having them sit up together, are they starting to be in sync with each other? Are they going to team up? So that's exciting to see. Everything about this worked. I loved the way this Raw ended.
We looked it up last week, right? And I think Sid beat Bret Hart on Raw for the title.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yep. Just only once. Only one other time, though. Yeah.
Second time ever.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You're having a title change on Raw. I have no notes on this match, but I cannot get over why they did the 24-hour Kane title reign.
It is baffling.
The only things I could think of is really what you said, Ryan, is having the title change hands on Raw. So almost like putting over Monday Night Raw.
Right.
And maybe trying to put Austin over even more than he already is. I don't know how you could possibly do that. I just have no explanation as to why they went with this 24-hour title reign for Kane. But outside of that, it's still extremely entertaining. The crowd was hyped up. It's basically, like you said, you're giving people a pay-per-view match for free on Monday Night Raw, which, looking back, we don't get that very often in the first 5 years of Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
So it is exciting. I can't get past that 24-hour title thing. I'd love to know why they did that, because they had to have that planned for weeks, if not months.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to look that up. But this gave the crowd their money's worth. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And just to get a little specific on what I meant with Kane holding the title once and only once. So this title is before the brand split to Raw and SmackDown, before they absorbed WCW and ECW. There's a certain point in, I think it was the early 2000s, where the titles got completely diluted. There was a fucking title for everything. There were 2 different titles. There was a Universal title, I think. There was a lot of belts in the mix.
WWE title, heavyweight title.
Right. And Kane did win some of those titles.
I believe he does win the WWE title, which was the SmackDown big title, right?
Right. But at this point, whenever titles are a rare commodity, and that's despite the European title and the IC title, but this is the one and only time Kane ever held this title. So, and I know whenever we were talking about it last week, we were talking about Bob Backlund's, 8-second or 8-minute run as the champion. And what differentiates...
No, the match was 8 seconds. He had the belt for at least 24 hours, yeah.
Right.
Okay. And he also had the belt for almost a fucking decade back. So Kane is just a singularly unique person to hold the title for 24 fucking hours.
Well, and with Backlund, they wanted to get the title on Diesel, so it wasn't taking it off of Brett and then putting it right back on him like they did here.
Yeah, that was a move to not have a babyface lose to a babyface.
Right.
They were building an angle there, which is what I think. And I mean, I hope that you're able to find out the background on this, because my headcanon on this, at least, was they had to do it this way in order to really get The Undertaker into the story, because it was The Undertaker that busted him open and blah, blah, blah. And they're building that Austin Undertaker program 1 week at a time. So that's the only thing I can think of as to why this was done the way it was done.
I'm going to say something, and I'm not going to say this is 100% true, but I know I heard this as an explanation for why it happened the way it did. And it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. He did not want to give the belt up and lobbied heavily after they pushed this storyline, no, this isn't going to work. I need to keep the belt. And this was the compromise.
Okay.
Which is shitty, because I do like Stone Cold, but if that's true, come on, dude. You're over this much. You really don't need the belt. Or you could have at least used this as a build-up to a bigger match, a rematch at a pay-per-view or something. It didn't have to be done 24 hours later.
Unless you wanted to job out Kane.
Right.
All right. Well, as I said, we faded to black, so let's take it on over to highlights and lowlights. Joe, why don't you take that first?
I think my highlight is going to be, like I said at the end there, the Cleveland crowd basically got a pay-per-view match, and very entertaining for them. And for us, we got a pay-per-view match for free on Monday Night Raw if we were watching on TV. My low light is the fact that they did not make mention of the Hell in a Cell match. I know that they have stories to tell, but every wrestling fan the next morning was talking about that match, and there was no mention of it on Raw, so that's my low light.
So my highlight is the same. I'm going with this final match. This is a pay-per-view main event match that we got for free on Raw. So not only the stakes involved, but a pretty damn good match between the two as well. So the highlight. My low light is absolutely everything to do with this fucking Brawl For All. The stupid ass fucking tournament in general. Fuck you, Vince Russo, and this dumbass idea. It was terrible from the get-go. Just fucking low light to the nth degree.
I'm not sure what it's going to take for me to include the Brawl For All matches as low light options, because it's so fascinating to me.
Watching a car wreck.
Right. Like we know it's going to be bad. It's always going to be bad, and it's never not going to be bad. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll get there at some point.
So the Brawl For All is your highlight, is what you're saying.
Well, let's hold on a second here. I think I'm going to need something a little more egregious for it to be my low light, is what I'm saying, because this was terrible, but we knew it was going to be terrible. My low light tonight is the fact that we've got a fresh angle between the DOA and LOD, and we are probably going to be seeing more of that. That's fucking horrible. That is horrible. I will take Brawl For All matches over anything having to do with the DOA any chance I get. So my highlight was actually the Cleveland crowd. Yeah. And ordinarily, well, for a very specific reason. They were on fire tonight, by the way, but they had good reasons. There was a lot of great action in this episode.
By all means, as a Pittsburgher, fuck Cleveland, but yeah,
right.
They did a good job tonight.
Usually I have a pretty low respect for crowds, but tonight the Cleveland crowd immediately reacted to the Brawl For All matches with the chants of "We want wrestling" and then boring. They were very clearly communicating their expectations, and I was very proud of them for that. So that is my highlight.
And let's not forget, us three were in that arena in 2001 to go see the Invasion pay-per-view.
I always love talking about the Gund Arena because it always makes me remember that. That was one of my favorite times of my life. So
the last two episodes, the King of the Ring and this Raw, we were at both of these arenas in the past, and both in 2001. The Pantera concert for the Igloo and Invasion pay-per-view for the Gund.
Yeah. All right. So Joseph, do you happen to have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around June 29th, 1998 for us?
I do. We'll start out with everybody's favorite topic, the Brawl For All. Dave Meltzer has some comments on this. He notes that this is the first time that the WWF has had bouts on TV that were not predetermined finishes. So I thought that was a nice fact by Dave Meltzer there. He also pointed out how much the fans hated it, even though modern WWF crowds are willing to accept pretty much anything. They were chanting, "We want wrestling." Dave Meltzer was disappointed that the WWF brought Steven Regal out to no fanfare at all, and he also referred to Sable as a remote control robot on commentary.
There's another Wrasslin Raw influencing the past. We've been calling her a robot for years now.
Yeah.
Somebody who's not a robot, Sunny, she has not officially been fired yet, according to Dave Meltzer, but she was given an ultimatum to attend counseling or rehab or be terminated. It's also been made very clear that she is having a difficult time, that Sable has shot past her and also expressed her unhappiness with being stuck with LOD. Undertaker's ankle injury ended up being bone chips and not a broken ankle, so he will still likely need surgery at some point, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. There will be an England-only pay-per-view again in London. It's going to take place on December 6th, 1998.
That'll be another one we don't cover.
Yeah.
Might be, yeah. This is some good shit here. Somebody who we didn't see tonight, Dan Severn. There was an internet shoot interview with Dan Severn. When asked about his rivalry with Ken Shamrock, Dan doesn't like anyone who isn't natural. Let's just say he didn't get his body by just working out.
Wow. Dan, you bitch.
Ken Shamrock has admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs in the past. He claims that he didn't use performance-enhancing drugs during his UFC days, to which Severn replied, I don't know if it's so much in the past.
Wow.
I don't know why you would do something like that, accuse Ken Shamrock of doing steroids. It's clearly just working out and
hard
a
worker.
good diet, protein shake.
Creatine. Exercise.
Yeah. The Harrisburg Patriot News had an article about Steve Blackman. So I'll give you some facts about Steve Blackman and his life. This is almost like a tease for Jobber of the Week. Steve Blackman graduated from high school in Annville, PA in 1981.
Right up the road from me and Joe right now.
Yeah. He played football, basketball, and baseball in high school and actually never wrestled after junior high. He did wrestle for Stampede Wrestling in Canada in 1988. However, his career stalled in 1989 when he contracted an illness while on tour in South Africa.
Jesus.
Which he didn't fully recover from for another 3 years.
Jesus.
What the fuck was it?
I don't know.
Cancer? Did he pick up cancer in South Africa? 3-year recovery.
I don't know about that, Ryan, but he claims that he can bench 330 pounds for 20 reps.
20 reps?
And 10 reps of 100-pound dumbbell curls. So those are some fun facts about Steve Blackman.
He's jacked.
That is all.
All right. Well, thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most pugnacious. JR dropped that one tonight. Monday Night Raw Review podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on July 6th, 1998, with matches featuring Brackus, Mabel, and many more.
Wow.
So, for Joe and Ryan, I am Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.